So we're almost there. We almost have the ability to test our photo upload. We just need the API endpoints now. So what we'll do, we'll go into our API, and in the controllers, I'll just new C# class, photos controller, and press return. Now, like any other controller, we'll derive from our base controller, and we'll give this an HTTP post in this particular case. And it's going to be a public async task of action results that's going to return a photo, and we'll just call this ads, and then we need to bring in the ASP.NET Core MVC and system threading tasks, and also the photo for our domain entity. And then what we'll do is we'll say ads, so that we get our handler, and say using application photos, and then we'll say command and command. And then what we can say is return await mediator dot send and command for our extremely small and thin API method. So now we can go ahead and test this, and I'm expecting to see problems that we can correct as we go along, but I'll show you what I mean. And inside module 16 we have a bunch of requests to do with our photos and our profiles, and the first one is just to log in and save the token for Bob, and nothing different going on here. We're simply logging in as Bob, and we're going to set the token to the user.token response. So I'll just send this particular request, and we get a fresh token for Bob, and then we've got a request to add the photo, and it's an HTTP post request that's going to API/photos. Inside the headers there's the authorization token being sent up, and inside the body, this is where things are slightly different. Instead of using or sending up application JSON inside the body of the request, what we're doing this time is we're sending up form data. And when we use form data, Postman gives the ability for us to select a file in this case, and we can go ahead and choose a file to send up. So just interrogate your file system and locate an image to send up to Cloudinary. I'm just going to use a Batman picture, so I'm just going to pick bat1.jpg, and then I'm going to attempt to send this up to Cloudinary. And if I try and do this, then this seems to happen pretty consistently now, where if we create a new controller, then until we actually restart our server, it doesn't pick up the changes inside our routes. So initially we get a 404 not found, and what we need to do to correct this is simply exit out of our project, out of the API server, and then simply restart. And once this is restarted, we should be able to then resend this request, and this time we get a different kind of error. We get a 415 unsupported media type, and for some reason, even though we're using the API controller attribute and we're deriving that from our base controller, our API method isn't able to ascertain where to get the information from to satisfy what's inside this command. Now inside our command, what we're expecting, or what we're sending, is an iForm file, and it's called file. Now it's highly important that what we are sending up in Postman as the key is also called file, and that's what our API controller uses to map the values that we're sending with what it's expecting in our handler. But for some reason this doesn't work, and we need to give this a hint. So what we need to do is give it a from form attributes, so that instead of looking inside the body or the query of the request, it knows specifically where to look to locate the file that we're sending up with this particular method. And now if we go back and resend this request, we'll find that this is now successful. And we get a 200 OK, and what we get back is the public ID as well as the URL of where we can download our image from. And it's also been given the isMain attribute set to true. And if I click on this image inside Postman and I click send, then we can see that our image has been uploaded to Cloudinary. Now this is a long image, and we don't want any long images inside our application, otherwise we'll need to account for this inside our application styling. And if we accept images of varying different aspect ratios, it becomes really tricky to style our application so it all looks neat and tidy. So on the client side, we'll provide a cropper to allow them to do this, but what we can also do, if I go back to our photo accessor, we can also provide additional parameters for what we're sending up. And because we're using Cloudinary, we get, as part of this particular service, we get the ability to transform our images as we send them up. And what we can do is give a transformation as another upload parameter, and I'll say new transformation. And then what we can do is start specifying the height and width, and I'll give it a height of 500, I'll give it a width of 500, I'll give it a crop of type fill, and what we can also do is set the gravity and specify the face as where we want the cropping to gravitate to. And this will prevent our image from going up as a long image, or it will go up as a long image, but then it will be cropped into a square image and then saved in Cloudinary. And if I go back and I just resend the request to add a photo, and do the same thing again, what we'll find is now we'll get a square image. So I'm just going to click on this new image, and this time the isMain is set to false, so that's good. And if I click on send again, then we can see that what we've got is now a square image that's been cropped. Now we'll also be giving the client an option to crop the image before we send it, but I just wanted to demonstrate that because it's something we get from Cloudinary as well. So that's what it looks like when it's successful, but what happens when it goes wrong? And I just want to demonstrate what we get from Cloudinary in terms of errors, because I'm going to give you an example of one type of error, but there's many different things that can go wrong when using an external service. So what we'll do is we'll go to our photo accessor here, and I'll just add a breakpoint on the upload results. And what we'll do is we'll just make a small change inside here, or at least I will, just so that I can show you the errors we get. And instead of the actual cloud name, I'm just going to use fake cloud name instead, which definitely won't work, but just to give you an example of the type of errors we can get. So I'm just going to run this through the debugger, and what I want to do is attach the debugger and press play, and then just select the API.dll. And once again, if you're on Windows, then just search for API.dll, because on Windows you'll see a longer path and it's sometimes difficult to identify where the process is that you're looking for. So we'll select .NET or API.dll, and once this is running, I'm just going to resend this request again. And this time we should hit the breakpoint, and we do. And what I want to take a look at is what's inside this upload results after we step over this particular request and actually upload our file. So I'm just going to step over this, and this then uploads the file to Cloudinary. And what we get back is the upload result. And if I take a look inside this, then what we see is that our error object now has something inside it. And we can see the error message, which is invalid cloud name, fake cloud name. Now, it's pretty obvious what was going to happen here. Obviously, it was going to fail. But if you do get any issues with uploading to Cloudinary, then this is the first thing you want to do. Now, because we've set this to pass the message in the exception, it may not be necessary to come into the debugger every time, but there will be other information you can get from here as well. Possibly inside this JSON object, which gives you a lot more detail as well. and it might be worth taking a look at if you do have any issues. So we already know this is going to fail, so I'm just going to play this particular request. And if I go back to Postman, then we can see the error that's passed back to the client. And all I'm going to do is just detach the debugger now and just reset the cloud name back to what it was before, which was the config.value.cloud name.